Hey guys, we're going to look at a review for our Unit 6 test on complex numbers. So what it is, I put together just like a review sheet like we would have done in class. I'm going to run through each one of these questions. I highly suggest that you either try to print this paper out if you can, do the questions out, and that you have this during your test, hint, hint, or at least put these questions, the problems down on a separate sheet of paper. And do them out, or even have the video playing next to you when you go to take the test. Whatever works for you. I am going to tell you that these at the top, you are going to want to have this, like these either memorized or at least have this out during your test so you can refer back to it. We're just going to consider it legalized cheating, okay? All right, so I'm going to run through these again after these questions. After I go through these questions, if you have if you're still confused on anything, reach out to me. We can make up, we can do a Google Meets at whatever time works best for you. Or you can meet me live during the office hours. Okay. All right, so let's start right here with number 1. So I'm going to do 2 times the square root of negative 36. So I know that the square root of negative 36 is 6i because it's negative, which leads my final answer is just 12i. Same thing with this one. So I have 3/4, and that is being multiplied by the square root of negative 64. Well, if I just think of the square root of 64 is 8, well, the negative one is 8i. So if I go to multiply this, I really have 24i over 4, which is the same thing as 6i. So I would just divide. So I'm multiplying straight across, and then I divide. For number 3, this one can be a little tricky, just the way it looks. So I have 10 times, now I'm going to split this up. Now this negative here, I'm actually going to put with the top number. So the square root of negative 49 over the square root of 25. Now if I go to simplify this, I get 10 times 7i over 5, because the square root of 25 is 5. Now I'm going to simplify, and I know I can take 10 and 5, I can simplify down into 2 and 1. So really I just have 2 times 7, which is really 14i over 1. So my answer would just be 14i. Well, that's really kind of what we started out with at the beginning of the unit. So hopefully by now they seem pretty self-explanatory. All right. I'm going to run through here. Now I know I have to simplify these radicals. So the square root of negative 49 is 7i minus 2 times 2i. So I have 7i minus, now I can multiply these, 4i. So these are considered like terms. So I'm left with 3i. And again, I haven't gotten into any of my I squareds or anything that I would use, say up here, like this one or this one. So I'm not going to worry about that. It's just I. So this one, be careful, there's a plus sign here, so I'm not multiplying, you're not going to do your distributive property. So really, I'm just going to combine my like terms. So I have 3 plus 5i plus 5 minus 2i. So it might look like a multiplication, but because of that plus sign, I'm just adding. So your like terms, 3 plus 5 gets me 8, positive 5i, plus a negative 2i is really a positive 3i. These are unlike terms. This is actually in our a plus bi form, which is standard form. So this is your final answer. Okay? All right. So if I take a look at this one, again, take close look as I have addition, so I know I'm adding here. However, I need to simplify some of these. So I have 9, just scoot in here a little bit. So I have 9 minus the square root of negative 5. That is not a nice number. So I'm going to split this up into the square root of 1 times the square root of 5 plus, I have a negative 4 minus, now the square root of negative 20, that's also not a nice number. So I'm going to split this up into the square root of negative 4 times the square root of 5. So if I go through and simplify these, I get 9 minus the square root of negative 1 we know is I, radical 5 I'm just going to keep, plus negative 4 minus, I can simplify this, 2I radical 5. Okay, now I'm going to look and say, okay, what are my like terms? I have 9 plus a negative 4, which simplifies to 5. Now I'm going to look at these here. What's a negative 1I minus a minus 2I, or plus a negative 2I. So if you type in negative 1 plus a negative 2, that's going to get you a negative 3I. And then what do we do with our radicals? We just carry them over. And that would be my final answer. That one's a little tricky. You just got to watch out for your like terms. Okay? All right, number 7. So if I'm looking at this one, I definitely know I need to simplify my radicals. So I have 9 minus, this is a nice perfect square, 10I, minus, same as this one, this is a nice perfect square, 9I. So now you just got to go say, okay, what are my like terms? I have a negative 10I minus 9I. So I'm just going to bring this 9 down. And if I combine these two, I get a negative 19I. Okay. So those are your examples of your adding and subtracting. Now these last few examples are going to be your multiplying. So this is where we're going to have to pay close attention to say what I squared is equal to, which is negative 1, and possibly what I to the third is equal to, which is to a negative I. So these might pop up when multiplying. All right, so if I take a look, looks like I got to use my distributive property. So this gets me negative 12I plus 20I squared. Negative times a negative gets me that positive. Okay? So if I look at this, I know you have to recognize that I squared. That's that piece. So I have a negative 12I plus 20, and I'm just going to turn that into, because right here I know that I squared is negative 1, and turn it into a negative 1. So this is really negative 12I. What's a positive 20 times a negative 1? Well, that's just a negative 20. So my final answer is that. Let's look at number 9. I gotta do the same thing, I need to distribute. Now be careful with this one, because you have an I squared and you have an I. So when I multiply that, that gets me 3I to the third power, because there's really a 1 here, plus 3I squared times 2 is 6I squared. So if you sit back here and say, okay, what do I know? I know something about this, and I also know something about that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change those into the values that I know, which happen to be right here. So I know that I cubed is really a negative I. So all I'm doing is converting that. Plus 6 times, I know that I squared is a negative 1. I'm going to simplify it. If I multiply this out, this is just a negative 3I minus 6. My final answer. All right, number 10. This one's always notorious. Anytime you see something squared, a quantity squared, it really means that you're multiplying it twice. Okay? So now what do I need to do is I need to now multiply these. 3 times 3 is 9. Minus 6i. Minus 6i. Plus 4i squared. Looks like I can combine my like terms in the middle. So I'm left with 9 minus 12i plus 4i squared. I know what I squared is. That's 9 minus 12i plus 4 times a negative 1. So I get 9 minus 12i minus 4. And now I can simplify these two. So my final answer, 9 minus 4, is just 5 minus 12i. All right, guys, 2 more. We can do it. So these ones I can go right ahead, and I'm going to multiply. That gets me 25 minus 35i plus 35i minus 49i squared. Now if I combine my like terms, I'm left with that 25 in the front. So these actually cancel out, so I'm left with minus 49i squared. Just like before, I know that I squared is a negative 1, so this gets me 25 minus 49 times negative 1, which is really 25 plus 49. So then my final answer would be 74. All right, last example that we've been working with. So if I take a look here, before I start multiplying, I know that I can simplify these. So I actually have 8 plus 5i times 2 plus, I know that the square root of 1, negative 1, is I. Now it looks like something I can do my double distributive property. So I get 16 plus I squared plus 10i plus 5i squared. Combine my like terms. So I get 16 plus 18i plus 5i squared. So it looks like this is the only part that I can simplify. So I have 16 plus 18i plus 5 times a negative 1, which is really 16 plus 18i minus 5. So if I combine my like terms, 16 minus 5 is really 11. I'm going to carry over the 18i. There's my final answer. All right, guys, look over these questions. And again, I'm going to put the test on quizzes so that you only have one chance to do it, and we'll take it as a test grade. But seriously, do the work to those questions on a separate sheet of paper. Get a hold of me before you take the test if you want to go over these questions. We can go through every single question again, whatever you need, so you get a really, really good test grade. Hope you guys have a good weekend, and I'll